Hey, everybody, welcome to Watches with Dennis and a fairly spontaneous live stream today, Saturday, February 25th, 2023. But this was one of the suggestions that came in from one of the Watches with Dennis club members. I made a message to that small group of individuals asking, like, what sort of content do they want to see? Because we're still kind of in a lull, right? We're not seeing a whole lot of watch releases. We're waiting for Watches and Wonders or the lead up to that, where I think like Omega will start dropping a lot of watches. And good morning, Kevin. Glad to see you're up and about this morning. Of course, you are an hour ahead of me, so that might help a little bit. Might not. We don't know. It's the weekend. We do what we want. Anyway, one of the suggestions that came in was to talk about alternative case materials with watches. And so that's what I thought I'd go ahead and spend some time this morning doing. I've pulled some watch examples up that I'll share the screen on so you can kind of see some examples that I think are interesting of these various types of cases. And I'll talk a little bit about what I understand about the case materials. Most of these case types I have not handled. I actually haven't been all that interested in alternative case materials, like from an ownership standpoint. Of course, there's so many different types that it becomes challenging. So, I guess to sort of start off with, let me explain which types we won't talk about that I think are common. So, we're not going to talk about stainless steel of any variant, like 316L, 904L. I don't care. Like we all know steel watches, right? That's what the majority of them are. We won't talk about gold, and that includes blends. So we're not going to talk about like Omega's bronze gold. We're not going to talk about white gold, rose gold, yellow gold, because again, it's very, very common in dress watches that when we're talking about precious metal, it's going to be some form of gold most often. So we'll avoid talking about that. And the third type that I'm not going to really discuss are sort of brass watches that are coated. Think like Vostok or a lot of less expensive watches or a lot of vintage watches where they might be plated or coated in something, but the base metal is just brass. Again, it's not a particularly interesting metal. It was done because it was inexpensive. So we're not going to really focus in on that. Not that these alternative metals have to be expensive. I just wanted to lay some groundwork of where I think we all kind of are going to come in from. Like we all are familiar with gold watches, stainless steel watches, and brass watches, even if we don't handle them very much. So anyway, let's just go ahead and get started because I don't know what else to say. Let's start with bronze because that is one I am familiar with. So bronze is often a yellowish metal, and there's no advantage aside from aesthetic to doing bronze. So I think that's probably the main thing I would know. Bronze is softer than stainless steel. Stainless steel is easy enough to work with, so it's not like you get some sort of big machining advantage for using bronze. Bronze is less hypoallergenic. Bronze is an alloy and it often contains a lot of copper, which a lot of people will have skin reactions to. It can also discolor the skin, which is why even when you do see bronze watches, very rarely are they entirely bronze in the sense that only up until recently, and I'm assuming they're coating. I've never found an answer to this because Oris and Tudor have started to have watches that have bronze bracelets, but even the old Black Bay bronze, which I have, I'm not wearing it today. I'm wearing my Seiko turtle today, but I do have a bit Black Bay bronze, the big size, the 43 millimeter, and even the case back is just colored bronze. It's not actually bronze because that would rust against your skin. So I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but basically bronze is not something people usually want on their skin, if not for the irritation purposes that it might cause if you have sensitive skin. The discoloration because bronze patinas, and that's the attraction to bronze. So, really, aside from that kind of vintage aesthetic and how it ages, and some people even hate how it ages, but they just like the natural color of bronze. I personally think bronze looks a lot like gold when it is not aged. But but aside from that, there's really no advantage. It corrodes more than steel. It's softer than steel. It's more irritating than steel. And steel's an alloy too. So a lot of people with sensitive skin, like if you're sensitive to steel, you will not deal with bronze at all. But let's go ahead and let's talk about a couple. So this is the version I own. This is the Black Bay bronze. This is actually the color scheme that I have. But as you can see with this coloration, all this does, because bronze alloys are not created equal. Just like we have 316L steel and we have 904L steel, which is what Rolex likes to use, and 316 is what a lot of other watchmakers like to use. You can have different blends of bronze. So this blend of bronze that Tudor does is one of my favorites. It's actually if you were to ask me to name one, it would be my favorite. I do think I've seen some pretty good bronze looks out of like Panerai and such, but I know I like how this one ages because it's very even and it tends just to get darker. This just starts to turn kind of like how the shadow is here. If you can see my mouse cursor along where the bezel is, it just starts to get darker like that, rather than what you might associate more with copper, a heavy copper load, which will cause a lot of greening. And I wanted to show an example of that. So this is from Teddy Baldessar's site because I know he sells these orises, these sort of cotton candy orises, and that came with the bracelets. And you can see how aged these get. Now, the darkness is still very much along the lines of what you would get out of Tudor. It just seems Tudor doesn't go quite as dark as these do. But again, this blend is such that it doesn't get a lot of green, which is for the best because you see how these bracelets are. So um, and whereas when this, I don't know if he has an example about this. Okay, so this is what it starts out as. So, good morning, BJ. Welcome to the live stream. We're talking about alternative case materials today. I just thought it would be it was a suggested topic that came in from one of the Watches Within Us Club members, which is a whole, let me plug that whole 99 cents a month and it gets you some, what does it get you? What are those emojis? Those little thingies you insert. I don't remember those are, yeah, those are emojis. Not, I always want to say emotes and that's not right. That's from the old BBS days. So bronze, a lot of people will go in and they'll be like, they might like this look, how shiny it is, but not like what it turns into. And you can clean this. There's like, I think there's like a way with lemon juice. You can clean this if it bothers you, but it will always keep coming back. So bronze is one of those metals where in my view, you either like the look or you don't. You like that vintage aged look, and you can look at the different brands. And I've shown you a couple that I like, Tudor and Oris, and say, okay, I like how that ages. Or if you want something that maybe looks more nautical, gets more green, and most of them won't have the green part touch the bronze part at all touch your skin. You can look at some other options. But if you don't like that look, in my this is my opinion, you probably want gold. And in that case, you should save up for a gold watch or a gold plated watch if you don't want to pay for a full gold watch, because bronze is not going to make you happy if you're constant. I don't think if you're constantly having to clean the patina off, it's just going to be frustrating. And gold won't do that to you. Gold watches are an alloy, and that's probably something worth noting. Well, gold is hypoallergenic, and we're not going to focus on gold today because it's a common case material. It's too soft to be used in 24 karat in a case. So it's a blend also, and it also tends to get copper in it. Most of the skin allergies that people have with watches are either due to the copper content or due to the nickel content. I think cobalt can do it also, which is sometimes in some titanium blends. So even so you need to be careful if you're going titanium because you need hypoallergenic. Just be aware that not all titanium is created equal either, because these are all alloys. So, okay, so that's bronze. That's probably the most common alloy that is not the ones we're going to talk about, right? Like steel, gold, and brass for the cheap end. So let's talk a little bit about silver. Silver again is another metal that you don't see very often, and I would say, well, you definitely see it less often than bronze. Part of that's probably because it's a quote unquote precious metal, even though it's not a particularly expensive one. That you tend not to encounter it. It also can leave coloration on your skin because of the alloying that's used, because silver is very soft, like gold. You cannot use pure silver for watch cases. It's way too soft, and it oxidizes. So you basically have all the same problems you have with bronze, but the tarnishing of silver, generally speaking, isn't seen as attractive. We'll do air quotes, attractive as bronze, with that bronze brings back this sort of nautical feel, right? This patina of the sea and the ocean and all the old works from, well, kind of what Orange Hand has pointed out. And welcome to the live stream, Orange. Is about moving out of the Bronze Age into titanium and carbon. And we're going to touch on titanium and carbon. They are in my list. But bronze, for whatever reason, probably because of statues and everything else, we have this huge historic sort of love of the look of the patina of bronze. The same is not to be said about the look of the tarnish of silver. There's only one silver watch I know of that's actively being made. I'm sure there are more, but I do like this one. Actually, I like this one a lot. And I hate to pull from Tudor again because I just used them in one of my bronze examples. But the Black Bay 58 silver, I think, is an incredibly attractive watch. Now, By and large, though, the silver of the case looks a lot like stainless steel, or like a cross between stainless steel and titanium, where you're going to see there are a lot of metals that live in this sort of silver to gray, or like shiny silver to dark matte gray realm that people turn to. And it's a good neutral color. People like it. But just with the taupe dial and the bezel and all of that, I have handled this watch in person, and I do think it is very attractive. And much like the bronze version of the Tudor Black Base, the alloy they've got here, as near as I've been able to tell, the tarnishing again is just this gets darker. So again, if you're hopefully not on your phone, well, I don't mind if you watch on your phone, but hard to see. If you get closer to the bezel where the lighting has shadow, it gets darker, like how the shadowing looks, is what it looks like when it starts to tarnish. It tarnishes fairly evenly and just sort of age. And again, you can clean it. You can polish silver. I mean, that's, polishing silverware when it was actually made out of silver was a whole thing. And so that is an option with silver. But again, unless you really like the look of it and are cool with the tarnishing of it, I mean, it does look a little different than steel. If you have it side by side, it's easier to tell, of course. But there's not a lot going for it, and I don't expect, unlike bronze, which kind of became a fad. And there are still some companies that lean pretty heavily into bronze. I think there's one micro brand that's very big into bronze. Silver, I don't think is going to take off. I just don't think it's the case. I actually have thought about getting rid of, like, trading in or selling my Black Bay bronze and getting this silver version. The main reason I don't, well, besides, it's a $4,500 watch, so it's not an insignificant investment. And this is a gripe about Tudor, but I'm going to plug it in here because, hey, it's my live stream, so we can talk about whatever we want. Is this movement annoys me. Now, I understand maybe the argument was, let's not have the case back be made out of silver and have that touching the skin, because this doesn't come on a silver bracelet. You can get this on a leather strap, or you can get this on a NATO. But so going with sapphire gives you something that's hypoallergenic that would rest against the wrist. I get that. I think it's more that they cheaped out and just were like, instead of putting silver on the back, let's just use sapphire because it's less expensive. And I'd be okay with that too, except this movement is so pedestrian. It's an impressive functional movement. It is not interesting at all to look at. And honestly, at $4,500, if you're going to show me the movement, I expect it to be decorated, not hand decorated, machine decorated, but I expect it to be decorated, right? Omega would decorate it. It just irritates me. So that's just that's a Dennis issue. That's a me problem. But that's probably the one thing that held me back from getting that watch. Not to mention, I have enough divers at this point, which is why I would get rid of one to bring another one in, because I have 4 divers at the stage, and I honestly probably just need 3. And by need, I mean 0 would be the true need. But I think 3 would be my ideal number. But I'm at 4 because that's the way life works with watch collecting. And I do like this idea from Origin. They could have put in an engraved silver rotor. Absolutely. And incidentally, we're not focusing on gold here because it's a common watch material, but same exact thing. If they have a gold version I don't know why you would go buy a gold Tudor. If you loved it, I guess you would buy it. But sapphire case back, and there's really no excuse with gold. I get it. Gold alloy could cause a reaction with some people, but it's no more risky than steel. So that's not it. It was to be cheap. And they didn't gold rotor it. It's the same boring move. I'm pretty sure they didn't gold rotor. You know what? Let's look. We're going to cheat, guys. All right, here it is. I am sure they didn't, though. Come on. Show us your embarrassment. They don't want to show it. Why are they hiding the truth? Ah, there it is. I just skipped it. It's my problem, not them. See? Just look at it. I don't even need to zoom in. There's nothing. There's not even machine turning on it. My sigh of sadness. I'll just put this back up in case I need it again later. Okay. I don't think I was actually sharing screen, was I? When I was doing any of that. Sorry, I'm bouncing between windows. I'll go back just in case I didn't let you guys see it. So here's the gold version with the undecorated, non-machine turned, boring movement. Like, I get that people sometimes want to see the movement. And you know what? That's why I don't complain when, like, Seiko 5s have sapphire casebacks, or the entry-level Hamilton watches have casebacks with undecorated. But there's a place for that at $4,500, not to mention $17,400 for that gold version. It's time for it's time for some decoration, or Yes, like what Orange Hand suggested, a precious metal on the rotor. I mean, even my steel Glashuta has gold rotor, or at least a gold edging on the rotor. Granted, it's a more of a micro rotor, so they needed the weight, but nonetheless, it's there, and we appreciate that. So let's hop, from silver to another precious metal. Let's talk a little bit about platinum. Um, and I don't have a ton to say about platinum because I actually don't care for platinum. To me, platinum is just a more expensive watch version of white gold. And so if you were wanting to, what some people call it stealth wealth, I'm not big into white gold either. I know a lot of people are. Like white gold is far more popular than yellow gold in particular at this point, and that's fine. Everything's a trend. But the part of the issue is, I believe, the price per pound may be, I don't know, it varies. I was looking it up earlier and it looked like gold was running more, but I didn't see what the than platinum, but raw, I'm talking the raw metal. But I didn't see like what the quantity was in the measure. So I don't know if it was apples to apples. The thing with platinum is that it's way harder to machine than gold is. Gold is a soft metal. Even gold as an alloy is a soft metal. Platinum is difficult to manage. And so because of that, there often is quite a premium on platinum watches versus the same watch in some variant of gold. So, I mean, and if you get the advantages of a harder metal. So I guess if you want a precious metal and you want something that's not as likely to scratch, but you want it to have that weight and heft and be precious and not be steel, platinum is a decent option. I don't have a favorite platinum watch to share. I'll go ahead and show you the Rolex Day Date that's in platinum, simply because I believe this version with the kind of machine turned bezel here came out last year. And that was the big change up because it's so hard to machine these notches in the metal that it took them quite a while to figure out a way to do it as a process. And so again, it's one of those, like, if you're into precious metals and you like the idea of something really hard to work with, you like the look of platinum and the heft of platinum and all the resiliency that you get with a metal that's difficult to manage, platinum may be the option for you. It is extremely, extremely expensive though. Um, I don't know if I'm on the page that's going to show you the price of these day dates. Day dates in general are very, very expensive watches. Um, so just I almost didn't include it, but we're talking alternative case materials, not alternative case materials. They're within the realm of affordability. So actually, we bounce this. This is what I get for not. I should have I didn't even think about discussing prices, quite frankly. So I wasn't ready to show monetary values on it, but I think it's good for context. So let's find it. All right, there we go. Day date. Feels like the same screen as I was on. Where are the used to? Maybe they don't list this one here. I thought they did. I don't know. You know what? We'll load it up somewhere else. Let me find a Google screen here. Day date platinum. I always have to say it weird to spell it. All right, it's about $69,000 to 75,000. Yeah. Here's what the Googles say. To 100,000. Okay, well, it depends. All right, let's say 70 to 100,000. There you go. That's about. These aren't the engine turn. The 100,000 is the engine turned one. If you want the plainer ones, you can save. You can save big. You can save $25,000. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about platinum. I don't really care about platinum. I don't think it's very interesting. All right, so one of the items that Orange Hand mentioned earlier was titanium and carbon, but I want to start with one that I actually hear about more than, well, not more than titanium, but I hear about it way more than carbon, and that's ceramic. So ceramic is a pretty interesting metal, or it's not a metal at all. Ceramic's a really interesting case material, and the reason for it is the scratch resistance. That, I think, is the huge attraction to it. It's super, it's super hard. The structure itself is rigid. It's hypoallergenic. So people that have allergies to metals would probably be drawn to trying out ceramic. It's pretty resistant to wear. It's resistant to corrosion, and it's light. That's the thing. It's lighter than almost all other metals that would be used. So you get all of this sort of stuff, plus the ability, because of how ceramic is, how its structure is, they can change the color really easily to a whole bunch of different colors. So you can get a whole bunch of options that aren't really viable with metal watches. But the big issue that I've always had, I've never owned a ceramic watch, and I've contemplated it. Um, but my problem is that it's what happens if what's the term that I read on one of the sites talking about ceramic? Catastrophic failure. I think that was how they expressed it. Catastrophic failure. That's my concern with ceramic. So ceramic doesn't scratch because of how rigid it is, but its rigidity also means that if it's traumatized, it has a tendency to shatter, to chip or to shatter. And so you can't like polish it out like gold. Like if you get a dent in gold, you could polish it, right? You could polish it. You could even go and weld in new metal. I've seen some places with steel. There's a service I know that will go like if people buy vintage Rolex watches that they feel are over polished, there are people that can go and like weld metal back into it and actually reshape it and get you back your original lugs and all of that sort of really really cool stuff. And welcome, Mike, to the live stream. We are talking about alternative alternative case materials. So, and mother of pearl will not be one of those, though. Of course, the rotors are a completely different realm where even more options exist than they do in the cases. So, but ceramic is a really cool look. Now, one of the things I noted was you can do a lot of different interesting colors with ceramic. I actually like personally lean to really work towards really boring, just like stark for me. The thing I think about with ceramic is the stark blackness that's possible. So, like a really black watch, I think of, and I think that's when I've looked at ceramic watches. And here's one of my favorites. This is from Rado. This is one of the Swatch Group brands. This is one of their Captain Cooks, and so I just like how you can see the casing here. This is in ceramic. So, and clever. They're gone with, I think, a rubber strap here. So you don't have to deal with, there would be a risk to ceramic if you had a ceramic bracelet, for example, sizing it when you're using tools to remove end links or remove links from a bracelet and put them back in. Any stress point, in theory, could be a point of fracture where it could break. So in theory, putting in and out screws shouldn't be putting you through the paces of destroying your watch, but it's a higher risk than a steel link is never going to shatter on you, even if you screw it up. So they've got a few other images of how this watch looks, but the Rado, I think they call it high tech ceramic, is a really really cool one, and not too pricey. I think it's under 5,000. Yeah, it's under 4,000. So this is a pretty approachable what a lot of people would call entry level luxury watch that I've looked at a few times thinking about getting. Now, if you want to go a little higher end, but not way out there, this is the first ceramic watch I think I ever saw, which is the Omega Black, so named because it's very black. Again, smart rubber strap is being used here. Legibility is a bit of an issue. This is very much more style over substance, though the loom on this is impressive. I also just want to point out that unlike Tudor, they actually decorate their rotors and movements at Omega. It's not a fancy decoration, but hey, we're paying money. We should get some decoration. So this is under 10,000, it's a $9,000 watch. I was wondering if they had the loom shot here. I don't think they do on the Omega site, unless maybe down below here. They might. I saw it back when it came out though, and I thought it was pretty cool. Someone had done some photos. Anyway, the loom's really good. It's like what you would expect from Omega. It's very bright. So this would be another option with just this really stark black is something you can get out of ceramic. So you can get a far more fun colors too that exist. But the thing that's always kept me away from ceramic is I'm worried about dropping it and breaking it. Quite frankly, I have my Santos. I have a Cartier Santos. First day, I was taking it off and I dropped it actually at my computer desk, and it hit the metal edge and it took a little ding in the lug. Now, okay, it's like okay, my first scratch into it, a deep scratch. That could be polished out if I wanted it polished out. But with ceramic, would that have broken the lug? I don't think the whole case would have shattered, but would the lug have snapped there? I don't know, and that's my concern. Because even with the Rado at like $3,200, I'm going to be pretty pissed off if I break my watch. So that's what's always kept me away from ceramic is that sort of concern. So All those same concerns at higher, even higher price points exist for sapphire case material. So let's talk about that a little bit, okay? So we're pretty familiar, most of us, with sapphire case display glass, right? Sapphire glass is the most common glass at this point. You know, it's displaced plexiglass, it's displaced mineral crystal, essentially any watch that's over $1,000, people demand that it be sapphire, with some very very rare exceptions like Omega leaning into the heritage of the Speedmaster and still doing Hezolite. But even they offer sapphire sandwich versions at this point. So some companies have actually made the entire cases out of sapphire, but so you get like all the same sort of stuff essentially that you would out of ceramic, except you don't get the coloration because the point of it's clear. Uh, and what it allows is the ease to view the entire watch movement. So that's the value to it. But all the same risks are there. Sapphire does not scratch; it shatters. You can take chips out of it. I've had multiple watches where I have a watch right now where I have a chip in the back of the sapphire. The watch came that way. It was a used watch. Someone probably damaged it with the bracelet. I had my Explorer 2 when I took it in for servicing, and I'd owned it over a decade. I had a couple of chips in it, so I had the sapphire replaced. It wasn't enough to obviously shatter the glass. It wasn't enough to impact the water resistance, but the watchmaker noted, yet you got a couple of chunks out of the sapphire, probably at the edges where I smacked it into things. So same sort of thing as ceramic. I don't know which one holds up more to a smack. I did not look that up. I would assume that um, I mean, sapphire's hardness is second only to diamond. So I would assume it's more likely to shatter than ceramic because ceramic, I'm assuming, is somewhat softer, but I don't really know. Regardless, those would be my main concerns. And I do see Mike in the chat has asked or has said, it seems when the watch is in a sapphire display case, the price is extreme, but I may not have enough exposure into that category. So not for me, I guess. No. And that's the thing. We are talking about a few items. Like we talked about platinum earlier in the live stream, some stuff that's just out of the realm of like me. It's out of my price bracket, out of my interest realm. And I've been trying to show some examples that I kind of like. I don't really like sapphire much at all as a case material, but here is an example. So this is a Zenith. This is the Day 5. I always want to say D5, but I guess they pronounce it Day 5. The Day 5 0G. Um, I'm wondering if this is the tourbillon version or not. I don't recall. Both are on this site that I'm at. So we'll cycle through some of these. So you see how it's just clear. It just lets you have this clearness. Now, in the case of Zenith, they've tried to do something with like a dial, like a 3/4 dial, almost like a 3/4 plate that you'd see from the Germans on the back of a watch, to give it some context, like a star field and stuff. But okay, so this is the tourbillon version. So, it gives you an ability to see through it at multiple angles. But again, and not everything is the Day-Fi, of course, for when it comes to sapphire cases. But the pricing on these is I looked at some other ones that were running like $100,000 that were sapphire case watches. I don't remember which ones they were. All right, so let's see. The tourbillon is 180,000 Swiss francs. That'd be a little bit more in US dollars. I don't know what the other one was. Doesn't matter. We're talking a lot of money. So yeah, no, it's a very, very expensive sapphire. I think the issue is even more so than ceramic because of how sapphire is made. It's difficult to work with. I think with ceramic, you use a mold, right? If it, I again, I'm not a watchmaker. I don't know. I know people like I used to work. One of my former coworkers, she does ceramics. That's like what she does now in retirement. And there's a kiln, and they use molds, and there are ways they can shape them, and then they bake them. I don't think that's how they can shape sapphire. I mean, I don't know if they grow the sapphire in a case, in the shape of the case, or what. I'm very now. I'm really curious about how they might do it, but regardless, it's difficult to work with. Sapphire itself is not an expensive material, but nor is ceramic. But ceramic is cheap, so it must be relatively easier to accomplish than it is with these sapphires. But maybe someone knows of a sapphire watch. Feel free to name it in the chat. If you know of a cheap one, a sapphire case watch, because I didn't. I only looked at a few, but none of the ones I saw were inexpensive. They were all luxury, high-end luxury, and they could be the elves. It could be the orcs. They were elves once, Mike. But they were taken by the dark forces and twisted and corrupted. Speaking of twisted and corrupted, I want to jump all the way back to one of the items that Orange Hand mentioned way early on in the live stream. We're finally to one of them. And it's not titanium, it's carbon. I was not familiar at all with carbon until I started putting my research together to talk about this episode. These case materials. So carbon has been used for a while, and so and there's more than one type of carbon, just like there's more than one type of ceramic. So it can be complicated. So, but carbon is synthetic composite materials. It's got carbon fibers in it, and then it's very, very rigid. So, and of course, carbon fiber is really popular in automotive. The thing about carbon or carbon fiber or carbon watches is they're strong and they're very lightweight. So you've got those two things, and then the look of it. The look of it is kind of that phrase I've heard is like high tech, right? Again, with automotive, you might think carbon fiber looks really high tech. Yeah, and carbon watches often have that kind of look too. The issues that I've seen with carbon, and I've never handled a carbon watch, but the issues that I've read about with carbon watches is it isn't as resistant to scratching and abrasions as you would have with, say, ceramic or sapphire cases. You remember we just talked about how sapphire and ceramic could shatter if you do enough force to them, but they're very hard to scratch, right? So you can't really refinish them if they're damaged, but they're very, very hard to scratch. So essentially, you either break them or they're fine, right? So the issue with carbon is it is, I'm not going to say it's easy to scratch, but it's far more scratchable. But you can't polish it, you can't refinish it, you can't really fix any damage on carbon. So you're kind of like it's easier to damage than ceramic, and there's no way to fix it just like ceramic. So that's probably the biggest issue I'm aware of with it. The other thing is the look. I guess it's different. That high tech look is different, so it can be somewhat polarizing, I suppose. But that's true, I think, with pretty much any case. I've grabbed a couple. I'm not a Panerai fan. Like, I don't like the shape of Panerai. For me, this would never. I can't zoom. I have to keep it. I keep my mouse moving here. But this is the very first one I saw when I started researching carbon type watches. So I'm hoping I'm zoomed in enough for you guys to be able to see that there's these striations, these stripes. I think it actually like how this case looks. Like, I like how the carbon looks on this. I think it looks good with the strap too. Actually, this might be my favorite Panerai I've seen. I know it's the same shape with that weird, huge, like this is a love it or hate it design. And it's been one that I've never thought would work for me. But this coloration with this carbon style, I do think looks very good. So I want to put it on my list as one that I really liked. The pricing is under $15,000. So again, I would never pay this much for what I would get out of this. But FYI, this is one that's shown up a lot. I do have another one that I also liked a lot. So this is from Doxa. Doxa is famous for their dive watches with this sort of a cushion case shape. And again, you can see, I can zoom in quite a bit for the Doxa. You can see the patterning of the carbon. So this look, that you can see it in the dial too. So this look controversial for some. Doxa does really bold looks in general. Like I believe they are the brand that invented the orange dial for a dive watch. Like that's their biggest claim to fame. And pricing wise, I did not check to see, but I think it was a lot less. Yes, it's under $5,000. So you can get affordable carbon watches if you want. I think it's a neat look. It is incredibly lightweight, so it'd be interesting to feel how these wear on the wrist, because the attractiveness of a lightweight watch, that's really subjective too. So I wore a Citizen chronograph, a quartz Citizen chronograph for years. I got it in high school, and I wore it all the way up until I was starting my career. And I wore it for about a decade, I think, because I think it was around after 10 years where I bought my Rolex Explorer 2, which I replaced it with. And even with the mechanical movement, though, the Rolex was lighter, and it was a little weird for me because, as a kid, I associated the heft of the Citizen with it being a more luxury watch than the cheap Timexes I grew up with. And so some people don't like really light watches. They feel cheap to them, like they're toys, even when the price points, such as with this watch, are clearly are clearly not toy prices. But anyway, so carbon, interesting material, and a little bit's being done. There are far more watches than this with it. I just don't see a lot of discussion, especially at the luxury end with carbon. So I'm wondering if maybe it's more attractive in some other realms, or if it's more often just seen in automotive tie-ins. And I don't tend to look at those type of watches. So now we'll go to Orange Hand's other item, titanium. Now, this is probably the most common material that people talk about. It's definitely the most common one I see people discuss nowadays, aside from stainless steel. Like if you're talking stainless steel alternative, people don't talk about the precious metal stuff because you're usually in dress watches at that point. But talking about functional, usable tool watch, sports watch styling, titanium, it seems to be the number one choice. And and I get why, because I think there are a lot of really strong advantages to it that so many of these other materials that we've discussed uh, don't have. Now, with watches, we were usually talking one of two grades of titanium. There's grade 2 and grade 5. So, and they're both quite prevalent in the watchmaking world. So, the things about titanium is, again, it's light, also, lighter than steel. So, but it's really strong. It's hypoallergenic. So again, depending on the blend, there might be still something that could irritate someone with sensitive skin. But if you are sensitive to stainless steel, you might be okay wearing titanium. So if you still want a metal watch, this might be an option for you. It's corrosion resistant. It's It's anti-magnetic, or magnetic resistant. I don't know if it doesn't really fight magnets. It's magnetic. It's unaffected by magnetism. Let's phrase it like that. The main issue that I know of, aside from what we talked about earlier with carbon and how some people don't like lightness, it feels cheap to them. Though I will say I think the attractiveness of titanium is you can get some very large watches. Again, this is where we see it a lot in dive watches, and then that keeps the weight down, so it doesn't become unwieldy, which steel can sometimes wind up being. Um, uh, the scratchability of titanium. Now, titanium is actually very hard to scratch as a metal. The thing I don't know metals very well, so my understanding is the thing with titanium is like some of these other metals we've talked about, like with a patina, like we talked about bronze and silver early on, and how they get a patina. There's oxidization that happens. Titanium also gets an oxidization layer that scratches. The oxidization scratches. So you get an oxide layer. It's very easy to scratch the oxide layer. Now, those scratches look like they fade over time because the oxide rebuilds. So if you scratch your titanium watch, it eventually heals. But if you're wearing it all the time, it can look like it's got a lot of faint scratches because you just keep scratching the oxide layer. That's probably the main thing that I think is an issue. It's also more difficult to work with, so the pricing tends to be higher on titanium watches than it does on some other ones. Before I show an example, I think I have two examples, yes, of titanium watches. Let me hit the live chats here. BJ says, I like carbon, but can sometimes feel like plastic. And that's probably part of that love it or hate it that some people have with it. So that would make sense to me. I do like the aesthetic look, though. Now, let me set up higher because Mike's comment's cutting off my chin. If you combine two types of titanium during forging, you can get Damascus. And if you heat treat it properly, you'll get some amazing colors. It will be polarizing, but I would love to see that option. Okay. So when you mentioned Damascus earlier, Mike, I didn't know what you meant. I thought maybe you meant tantalum, because I'm going to talk about tantalum next as my last category for watch cases. And I wasn't sure if that was another name for it, but apparently not. Okay, so Damascus is a blending of titaniums. So let me start with this. We're going for a hat trick here. So this is the third Tudor I've done today. I did the silver Tudor. I did the bronze Tudor. Let's do the titanium Tudor. Now, this is a grade 2 watch. This is not the Black Bay. This is the Pelagos. And that was Pelagos's big claim to fame, right? It was the real dive watch. The Black Bay line of Tudor, their most popular line, is very vintage inspired, a lot of steel. They've been playing in some other materials as well in their Black Bay line, but the Pelagos was using titanium. That's its thing. So it tends to be a grayer look than steel. You can do the whole bracelet, unlike with, say, bronze or silver. You can't, you don't want those metals generally. I know there are exceptions, including Tudor has a bronze bracelet. And again, they got to be coating it, right? I Never seen a confirmation of what they do to keep people from getting irritated, but bronze can be very irritating on the skin, even for people that are otherwise not sensitive to, like steel, the nickel in stainless steel or copper in other metals. But anyway, I digress. Um, so here's one. It's under $5,000. But again, you, you price wise, if you don't recall, we did look at a silver Black Bay, which is cheaper. So so titanium, it is harder to work with and it does tend to go for. You can get far cheaper titanium watches than this, by the way. I like Citizen has all sorts of watches in titanium. I almost put a couple in here because I like a lot of how titanium looks because it looks a lot like steel. So generally, I think most people will find titanium inoffensive as long as they aren't bothered by how light it is or how it might be perceived to scratch. I've heard some people feel that grade 5 doesn't look as scratchy as grade 2, so that might be a factor. And let's go ahead and bring up a second Omega. We did one as an alternative to the Rado Captain Cook on my ceramic examples. So here's an example titanium watch. This is the No Time to Die watch. It got a lot of attention related to the latest James Bond movie because it's actually in that movie. And the watch came out well before the movie because the pandemic delayed the movie. But this is also a grade 2 titanium watch. So those just happen to be the ones I grabbed because I like how they look. I'm not normally a Fotina fan, but I think it actually works on this watch. I think it's well balanced. I like the other. I like the other Diver 300Ms more than this watch that are in steel, but I do think it's a good use of titanium, and I think it suited this particular watch. And just like with the ceramic, we're looking at something that's closer to the 10,000 line when we're looking at the Omegas versus when we were talking about Tudor. But it is an option. But titanium is prolific at this point. There are micro brands, I believe, doing titanium at this stage. So you just have a lot of options. And you can find, as I noted, like with Citizen, you can find some fairly affordable titanium. So if it's a metal you're interested in, or you've struggled with stainless steel because of the allergies, or maybe if you work in a lot of a briny environment, even stainless steel can corrode. Titanium might be more attractive to you. So it is, outside of like the precious metal realm of gold, it is the most it's you see it more than bronze, you see it more than everything but stainless steel. Titanium is like the metal. So I had one last one that I can't really say it's prolific, but that has become more and more, I guess, recognized in watchmaking, and I've seen it referenced. I've seen it discussed a few times on Watch You Seek and stuff. Never looked into it before. And it's called tantalum, and I didn't know anything about tantalum. So tantalum it's not a precious metal, but the watches that have it tend to be very, very expensive. And the reason for it is that it is, I mean, now it's actually a rare metal. Like my understanding is less abundant than gold is in terms of presence in the earth. But tantalum is extremely hard to work with. We're talking like working with platinum. It's hard to work with. But one of the interesting things that I learned was I was trying to read up on what are the attractions of tantalum. Tantalum is really got high. It's hard. It's got a really high tensile strength. In fact, tantalum is so strong you do not need to alloy it at all. We even stainless steel is an alloy. We alloy gold. It's too soft. We alloy bronze as an alloy. We alloy, for watches, we alloy gold. We alloy silver. We do not need to alloy tantalum. You can, but you could if you wanted to, but it alone is strong enough to be a watch case. So, but the machining of it is incredibly difficult. And visually, when I started looking at these, to me, it looks like titanium. I mean, I guess not. Not exactly. Again, if it was side by side, if I saw it side by side other stuff, I think it would feel different. Like maybe it's got a more bluish hue to the gray than titanium does, and these both are, of course, in turn darker than stainless steel tends to be. But it's really interesting, and it's still relatively rare because of the difficulty of getting the element and working with the element. So not very many companies have played with it. I'm going to use a company I don't even know as my example because I wanted to show you one that I thought was very attractive. So this is a brand called J.N. Shapiro. and this is their Infinity Tantalum watch. And there are other tantalum watches. Y'all can go do your own Google search on it. Uh, Obviously, I'm showing off the dial here a bit, uh, eh, more so than the case, but there is a good case shot. So, but I do like how this looks. They didn't crop my Arabic numerals, so I'm already happy with this whole small seconds thing going on here. Interesting hands. I looking at this dial. I think this is a brand I don't want to look into because I don't think I can afford any of it. Oh, well, Straps, California, at least. Maybe this is an American company. Okay, so here's a shot of the tantalum. So you see, to me, again, without side by sides, I think you're very much getting that same vibe you get with, if not so much brushed stainless steel, titanium, and and maybe silver. It's got that look. It looks like titanium. It looks like titanium. So, tantalum. I guess if you got the money and I'm wondering how much this watch was. Oh, it's actually not as bad as I feared. When I saw it was limited to 26 watches, I thought, oh gosh, there'd be a one in front of this. It's only $33,000. Okay, so but it's so difficult to work with. You just don't see it around very often. So anyway, but it is a material that's getting a lot more discussion, and some watch aficionados are very attracted to it. So I wanted to include it in my list. So that's all the types I wanted to talk about. As I noted, I'll note it again here at the end for those that joined in late or have jumped around the video. We didn't cover the common stuff. So we didn't talk about stainless steel outside of comparison purposes because everyone's familiar with it in watches. We didn't talk about gold because it's the most common like dress watch metal that's used. And we didn't talk about brass because affordable watches for years use brass with various coatings. Like if you go buy a Vostok today, it would be a brass watch like chromed or something like that. So you didn't see the brass, but you can scrape through it. So what we did cover is we covered bronze, we covered silver, we covered platinum, we covered ceramic, we covered sapphire, we covered carbon, we covered titanium, and we covered tantalum. We did not really cover Damascus, but that's because I don't know if any watch has ever been done with it. But it sounds interesting. So anyway, that's all I wanted to do for today for a live stream. I just thought I've been so busy with work. I've been mostly just turning out a few short videos. I experimented actually a little bit. I'm just going to ramble for a while here. We're done with the metal discussion. I experimented with like doing my first thoughts videos I like to do with releases because we're getting closer to watches and wonders. Now YouTube is further. They've refined and revised their shorts thing. That's like their what is it like? That's like those Instagram videos. So they need to be under a minute on YouTube. So I've experimented and did a couple of first thoughts in the shorts format. I don't think I can keep it that short. I really my problem I've run into is by the time I get done going over the specs of the watch, which is something I like to do in all my first thoughts videos, I usually only have somewhere on the order of 15 to 25 seconds to leave an opinion. And I've done a couple, and one of them was on an Omega watch, and it's got good view count, but I don't feel like I said anything substantive. My first thoughts videos, I thought I might be able to convert because they're usually pretty short. I usually can keep them to 5 minutes or less, which that avoids a lot of ads because obviously anyone who's on YouTube, well, anyone who's got enough, who's partnered with YouTube gets money with ads, so we like ads, but I don't like to make people watch lots of ads. You avoid the mid-roll ad by YouTube's algorithm if you keep your video under 7 minutes. So most of my videos don't ever have a mid-roll. But I thought with the shorts, it might be even better. But it's too hard. It's too hard. I'd rather just give you an under 5 minute video. So I'll probably move away from doing that. And shorts will be more wrist shots and just, zoom ins on dials and just more basic stuff where people just want a quick little view of, a watch running. And that's pretty much it. I don't know about, I've been thinking like when to get a new watch. Obviously I got this Seiko not that long ago, and I have a review up on that on my channel, so you can check that. This is one of the quote unquote king turtles. This is actually a turtle themed turtle. It's very turtley, terrible turtle rage. So I've been still checking on like Zenith Chronomaster. I've been thinking about some other stuff, maybe doing some trades. I'm also wondering if I should wait a little bit longer and see if the watch market drops even more with recession factors. It's so hard to say. The watch brands keep raising their prices, but the used market I'm not sure it's going to be able to keep holding. So anyway, because everything I review is the stuff I own, unless I want to start borrowing stuff. It's just kind of how it is. So I don't have any reviews in the pipeline right now, but I thought a live stream might be warranted. And I want to thank Scott, who is one of the Watches with Dennis channel members. And that's 99 cents a month for anyone who wants to join it. I put a post out just to them, asking them if they had thoughts on what they wanted to see. And he suggested talking about unique metals used in watches. And so that's why I did this video on case materials, because I thought it'd be a fun discussion. So thanks for everyone who was able to join in during the live stream and leaving your comments. I do appreciate it. And I hope everyone who watches it on record enjoys the meat of the discussion that happened before this part. And otherwise, I will talk to you all on the next video. Have a great day, everybody.